So equality is something I was very excited to talk about when Ben and I spoke. Kristen Bonnet, who's sitting in row 3, was like, "Is your talk gonna have cats? So this is for you." These are my cats, Inkjet Printer and Leela. I'm not kidding. I'm Sam, their mom. I am the Director of Academic Ops and Diversity at the Iron Yard, which is a code school here in town. I think we have a field trip coming up with Creative Mornings in a few weeks. I am a graphic designer turned advertising designer turned grad student who taught students turned design instructor at the Iron Yard turned manager of instructors to what I am now. And it's been a very loopy sort of path, but a really fun one. And design is amazing, and being creative is amazing, and coffee in the morning is amazing. I'm also a cat mom, like I mentioned earlier. I am a person of color, I'm a woman, and I was born in Bombay, India, and was raised in the Dutch island of Curacao. There's probably only one other person from there who I am related to. Hi, sister. I didn't expect there would be too many woos, but thank you, Dee. This is my first Creative Mornings talk, the one where I pulled Ben aside. That's me over there. I'm looking down at my empty coffee cup, which looks really sad. I'm sitting next to Miss Haley McMichael, who is also, there she is. Hey, Haley. Every Creative Mornings that I've come to, I usually have a sketchbook. I do have one today, but I thought it would not be cool for me to be just sketching up here. Before jumping into the equality side, just really quickly on the Iron Yard front, what I've been doing for the last few years in relation to teaching and in relation to bringing diversity and inclusion into tech is a few different projects that I'm really proud of. One of them is something we've done since before I was a part of the team, and that's a 1K scholarship for people who are underrepresented or discriminated against in tech. And also that includes military veterans, active military personnel as well, since the boot camp environment can be really cool for someone who has come out of a very different sort of boot camp environment. So that was really important to us. The Opportunity Project, which was started by the Obama administration to make data that can be made public, so nothing personal about you, opening up that data so people can build apps to impact social change. And that's really awesome. Like APIs and data sets from the US Census, from Google, from Redfin, from Zillow, from smaller groups collecting their own data, all sharing it in one place so that people could build apps and overlay information that maybe hadn't been put together before and draw new correlations and work on solving a lot of issues in the socioeconomic side of different neighborhoods in the US. And we pledged to be a school that would teach students how to use those APIs and data sets. And we got to go to the White House 3 times last year because of that, which was really fun. We also, right now, my big project is the Yes We Code Fund. It's a fund in partnership with Van Jones's organization, Yes We Code. And it's a scholarship that means that multiple code schools work together to provide scholarships to people who are women or identify as women, people who are people of color and commonly discriminated against in the tech industry, and specifically people who are financially burdened by the way that society has sort of set them up for failure and not providing them with the things that they need. For the last year, we're almost at the 1 year, I've been overseeing, along with another executive, we're the 2 executive sponsors of our Diversity Council, which is about 25% of our company, working on different initiatives from staff diversity to student diversity, diversity in the community, how we talk about it, how we influence people to change their mind, and a few more things like that. This was at South by earlier this year with Van Jones, oh my God, where we announced, the scholarship started last fall when Joe Biden announced it, but we renamed it earlier this year at South by, so I just wanted to throw that slide in there, because I'm still like, what? So words. I want to sort of give you my definition of what these words mean to me, and I know design and creativity, those are all very general terms. When I'm talking about design in this talk, I'm thinking about it more, not just the visual side, I'm thinking about design thinking, I'm thinking about problem solving, and that's how I actually define creativity, is the ability to problem solve. Design can be visual, it can be web, it can be print, it can be apps, it can be advertising, whatever it is. Diversity is a tough word. I think we all have a general sense of what that word means, but in terms of how I approach on a day-to-day basis, that's an end goal. That's what I want to get to. Inclusion is the way that I get there. By being inclusive, you increase diversity. Intersectionality, that's an important one if you've been looking into a lot of Twitter conversations right now, that diversity doesn't just apply to women. It just does not apply to people of color. It also applies to people who have disabilities or abilities or are older. Like, we need to start including people who are older and not expect every developer or designer to be a 20-something Mad Men-esque sort of person. And sometimes these areas intersectionality is about some of those discriminated groups' needs overlapping so that we're not just focused on one side of it. And then we see that this is a lot more complicated than just saying, oh, well, all women just need this and all people of color just need this. Sometimes a woman of color needs a little bit of both or a whole new solution. Empathy is how we get there. We listen to each other, we have conversations, we look around the room that we're in and maybe introduce ourselves to someone new and ask them how they're doing and what's the hardest thing that they're dealing with and what's the easiest thing that they're dealing with. And then equality and equity. I'm gonna play a little game with y'all. Without going into my definitions of them, I'm gonna use visuals because I'm a graphic designer. So here's two. One of these is equity and one of these is equality. I want you to raise your hand if you think your left is equality, okay? And now raise your hand if you think the right image is equality. Okay, really interesting. This is one that helped me. I've heard definitions of both words a lot in the inclusivity and tech conversation space, but here's how it actually breaks down. We're thinking about equality, thinking if we just give everyone the same tools, they'll get there. They'll be able to watch the baseball game. Equality is giving everyone the same tools to get there. Equity sort of goes a little bit further and says, not everyone is starting at the same point, so they can't have the same starter pack across the board. And then the reality, that's what we're really working with. That is our true starting point. So in terms of what I'm going to be talking about, this is my North Star, this is what I look at. So why is it important? Believe it or not, this is something that I have to still go over and over with a lot of different companies and people that we talk to, so that company culture doesn't suck. I'm sure many of you have gotten to a point in a job interview where you're told, well, we want to do one more call and see if you're the right culture fit. A lot of times culture fit means we want to see if you can be like us. We want to take you for a beer and see if you're exactly the same as us and that we're all the same and think the same way and that there's no difference in opinion. And that's a tough, tough thing. We need to start thinking about culture fit actually being someone who's going to challenge our mindset and question everything that we're doing and provide new perspectives into it. People are actually happier and safer when they feel like they're included, that experiences for them and the workplace that they spend so many hours at every week is a place that they feel safe and happy, that they have what they need to do the job that they need to do, and that's not haircuts at your desk. That's making sure there's tampons in the bathroom, making sure that if you have coworkers who identify with a different pronoun than what they were born with, that they have a safe place to use the restroom. I'm gonna get a little political up in here. Communication improves because you're not generalizing. You're thinking about what questions people might ask. And I'm taking this sort of from a managerial approach, but also want to try to provide as much insight as I can for anyone who's maybe looking for a job, thinking about what they want to do next and what to look out for if this is something that's important to you. from a design perspective or developer perspective, really diverse user stories when you start talking to other people, not assuming what you think they're gonna do with your app or website, but actually asking them. A/B testing is pretty cool. You should try it out. Maybe go A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing if you can. And the hardest sell is reminding companies and people who are sort of questioning why we're having the conversations we're having right now is we actually make more money because we're being more inclusive to our users, to our coworkers, to our community. Super cool. I want to share like a few things that I'm really excited about in the inclusive space right now. Who has an Amazon Echo Dot thing? So cool, awesome. So I don't have one. I'm sort of a little scared of it. I'm like, they're listening. They're really listening to everything I do and say. They're gonna hear me talk to inkjet printer and Leela all day. Great. But a super cool thing about the Echo that they maybe didn't plan for, I'm not sure, and I would love to find out, is that it's being used by a school that has people who are deaf come stay with them. They get a dog that they help train. They've trained the Alexa to then give the commands to the dog to help the person who's blind. I doubt that that was maybe on their like, here's where this product is gonna go. I think they were really just hoping that we were gonna ask like what each Kardashian is doing. But this is a really cool side option, and that's the type of stuff that if we started thinking about that when we're building, this could be the impact that it has on someone else that isn't the like, here's our end goal, here's all the ways that whatever we're building can take these detours. That's a really important part of it all, and I thought this was really cool. This is Ashley. I met Ashley and her mom earlier this year at another conference. Ashley literally has to walk around as a startup founder who's looking for funding. Mixtraz is a app that when you're going to an event like this, when people register, you're assigned one other person you don't know to meet while you're there, so you're not going into a new meetup or event feeling like you don't know anyone. It's like you have a buddy. We've paired you up with someone based on a few things that you've filled out. Ashley had to walk around at the convention center in New Orleans, literally having to wear a shirt saying that she is a Black founder and that she needs funding, because she has to work that much harder being a woman and a person of color to prove herself and get seed funding. It shouldn't be like that. But Ashley is awesome. And that's her mom, like so kick-ass. They are just two ladies rocking a business together. I also love this quote. So if dudes are developing software, they're only solving problems dudes have. How many people have seen the movie Code Debugging the Gender Gap? A lot less than I thought. It is on Netflix. Highly recommend it. One of the really interesting things about this quote that I heard after watching that movie is that there was a time period, I forget if it was in the mid-2000s, that there were a lot of car recalls due to airbag deaths. And that was because the engineers who positioned and placed those airbags in those cars were all males of a similar stature. Most of the people who died in those deaths related to the recall were women and children. If you don't test your product with the different people and users who are going to use it, it could be a matter of life and death. Also, three other important points in that movie. Representation matters. Seeing people who look like you or maybe relate to you a little bit more is really important. That can impact change for so many young girls, which is why I love Chick Tech so much. So you're amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, Nicole. Meritocracy versus access. This sort of goes back to the image I had earlier. There's a lot of, we'll hire the right person for the job. If they're the fit, we're good. But the thing is, as companies or people who are hiring, we can do a better job at also understanding that not everyone is a cookie cutter and not everyone is starting with the same starting point. There's a lot of people who are very lucky to have Treehouse or other subscriptions where they can learn Photoshop, Illustrator, or HTML and CSS. But the socioeconomic part is another part of diversity that we don't talk about enough. That if we didn't start with that, we didn't have access to that, there's not a lot we can say in terms of, or we're not going to have a diverse workforce if we're just like, yep, you have to meet this certain bar and that's it. You also have to give back to the community. Okay, if you're not finding the talent pool that maybe is more diverse and you're seeing that a lot of people who are maybe in different socioeconomic statuses or a person of color, then do something in your community to help impact that change. And then the last part is mentorship. That matters. Just having a conversation with another team member. It doesn't have to be someone younger. It doesn't have to be an entry-level designer or developer. It could be someone in this room. It could be someone who is your senior. I can tell you from managing a lot of people, they've taught me more than I think I could ever teach them. And that matters. And talking truly about those perspectives, having a taco together, pouring extra donia sauce on top of it, like have some real conversations and just talk. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to Skillshare, HTML and CSS tricks or things like that. It can just be having a conversation with someone and again, asking them what's the hardest thing that they're dealing with or what the easiest thing they're dealing with is. From my perspective in the workplace, this is sort of the 5 areas that I really try to focus on with the Diversity Council and as an exec team member is the hiring part matters. And a lot of people are having those conversations saying, yep, if we get the right people in the door, they'll be fine after. And they sort of hire them and then just leave them. Like, okay, they'll be fine now. And then within a year, maybe 2, a lot of those folks leave because they're not being supported to continue that. They're sort of brought in and said, okay, you're left to your own devices. But retention is also a big part of that, so that you continue to work towards the long-term goal, not just the short one, that we got people in the door so that when we put out our diversity numbers, we can say that we hired this many people. But how many of them did you keep? That's a really good question to ask if you have an upcoming job interview, by the way. Continuing education can be a great way to retain people. Help them continue to develop their skills. It doesn't have to be hard skills. It can be soft skills, communication skills. It could be a side project. Creative Mornings was built as a side project. And that's so cool. And look at where it is now. So side projects are important. Time to do those, support to do those, maybe a little bit of time off to do those is really important. Mentorship I mentioned earlier, and having empathy I also mentioned earlier. All key things in the workplace. This is part of the diversity report that Zapier. So they are a company that's sort of like a if this, then that for business needs. And they've been putting out little tidbits of different things they've done to push diversity initiatives forward. So it can seem really overwhelming to try to solve really big problems. And it does to me all the time. It's like, how can we solve this? I wish there was an overnight button solution, something, the easy Staples button, just click on that and we'll be good. It's really hard, it's hard work, brings me to tears on so many occasions, but this is a really good example of, it could just be the little things. It could just be that your dev team builds a Chrome extension that blurs out names and photos on workable profiles so that there is no gender or race bias, which we've seen so many people go through. Why I, for so many years, have gone by Sam and not Sameera, right? I'm making it easier for other people, or maybe making it seem like, could be a guy, could be a girl, we'll see, but her name's Sam, or his name's Sam, and not going by my full name. That sort of stuff matters. And it could be something as small as that that impacts change and removes bias from, or at least reduces bias in the type of work and hiring that we do. They have a whole lot of other cool stuff in there, but I thought the workable one was pretty awesome. Also, little things like being more empathetic, and why I mentioned communication improves, is understanding that, sure, we can start by saying, and being inclusive and saying, what gender pronoun do you prefer? But this tweet was 3 days ago, and it's amazing. It just sort of blew my mind. I snuck this in there last minute. We should be asking, what do you use? And we'll use that. So it's not about prefer, it's what that person is comfortable with. So for me, I like to lecture in front of classrooms. That's been a lot of what I've done. I try to leave with a call of action. That's the advertising side coming in. So I'm going to go into a little bit of homework that maybe we can take into our day, start marinating in our minds over a few weeks, and maybe impact some change. Some of it will come from a managerial experience, some of it will come from a design experience, some of it from a developer experience. Update your voice and tone guides, and really consider the language that you use with not only your internal staff and in your onboarding docs and things like that, but what you put out there in your content. for everyone, and use appropriate pronouns. I think the APA recently updated there, so it's more they and him and not they and them, not he and her. So that's really important. Start a swear jar for guys, not actually for just guys, but for when you say guys. I've been guilty of that myself. My first, when we opened the Iron Yard Austin, we had a swear jar because we as a group decided that we wanted to move towards saying y'all more instead of guys. And we're in Texas, like y'all is so easy, y'all. And it could just be, $1. That's what we set it to. There's a taco truck across the street from our campus, and we, for the first semester, we're going to get a lot of tacos. And we've worked towards that. And it's not an overnight thing. This is something that when I work on this with a lot of staff that I'm onboarding is, oh, I said it again. The fact that you're catching yourself saying it and then maybe you correct or notice it next time, it's those little wins, right? We're not gonna solve this big problem overnight. It's all those little wins that are moving in the right direction. And with that said, it's like, oh, but I'm not personally offended by that. Someone else might be, but it's also, maybe they're not offended, but there's so many other triggers that make women, for example, not feel included in the process. So it's just a little bit of a step in the right direction. Have people who don't look like you or act like you join the conversation. Don't look for a certain answer or for approval, like, yeah, I'm gonna get the answer I want on this design brief or this voice and tone guide. Get people who are different than you, that work differently, that maybe you butt heads with at work to look at something. They'll give you the truth, especially if you butt heads with them. And use Erica Hall's advice on asking the right questions. She has a book out. It's called Just Enough Research. It's on abookapart.com. It is awesome. It's all about moving away again from those leading questions where we ask the type of questions that'll give us the answer we want, not the answer we need. And that's really important no matter what sort of creative role you have. Test all the things, going back to those airbags. Encourage open source projects and be mindful of how you talk to other people on places like GitHub. There was a recent report saying that women are more likely, women and people of color are more likely to have their GitHub issues or pull requests rejected, and also have people who get snarky because of the internet to them because of it. Like, oh, that's wrong. I can't believe you wrote that JavaScript that way. Like, no, that's not okay. But encouraging open source where people can share those ideas, like the Opportunity Project, and really work towards sort of showing our answers so someone else can learn from it. Some of my favorite things about the design and developer industry is that because code is up on GitHub, people share, and they may have used that on a client project, but it's something that they realize, well, if I need this, someone else might need this. So even building open source into an end goal for any project that you build. Maybe you are building it for a client, well, talk to the client, see if there's a way that we can do this open source too, and then really impact change long term. Don't design for one type of user. We are really guilty of that because when we're on our Mac computers at our Google Fiber fast internet, we assume everyone's having the same experience, and that's not true. We know that's not true. We know that we're lucky to have that here in Austin and have Google Fiber and live on the world of Macs with all of our stickers, but that's not always the end user. You have to change it up. You have to test in other places. And you have to stop designing for designers and developers. The hamburger menu is a great example of that, right? We saw a few people do that. They posted it on, not GitHub, but Dribble. And it's like, okay, hamburger menus for everyone. Never once did we talk to the users of that. Most people who were polled, there was 2 studies that went out about A/B testing, I think back in 2014, maybe 13. Most of the people who looked at just 3 lines on a website at the top right or top left were like, oh, I just thought that was a part of the design. So A/B testing wise, more people clicked on it when the word menu was next to it. So we're making assumptions because we're seeing other designers and developers do it, but again, that's not what the users need or we're even asking for. And then build side projects like Creative Mornings that benefit others. See, I have a lot of homework for y'all. Watch Code Debugging the Gender Gap. It is on Netflix. It's worth starting those conversations sooner and breaking down some of the stigmas that are associated with our society now. Recognize and learn from your unconscious bias. So the things that you might be saying, whether you are assuming someone who emails you is a he or a she. I'm sure we've all gotten mail where it says, Mr. Sam, thank you for your donation. Maybe you haven't gotten it with Mr. Sam, but you know what I mean. Start a diversity council. This is something I learned from my sister. Ask if you can start one at your workplace. What you need is an executive sponsor to say, yeah, as leadership, we will support this. Feel free to run with it, give us updates. And maybe like $50 for like a once a month diversity lunch and learn, where tacos and Topo Chicos can be all around as you talk about important topics. And then incorporate with meetup groups that are doing amazing things. These are all little things that we can all start getting on right away. When I put this list together, I used a design strategy to kind of come up with it. And that's one from IBM. So I know there's some IBMers in the house today as well. So think about your IBM design thinking charts. There's a part within the IBM thinking design process where you give a team about 2 minutes and Post-it notes and Sharpies to come up with as many ideas that are related to solving a certain problem that you're prompting them with. And they have 2 minutes to come up with as many ideas as they can. And then they put them up on a whiteboard or a wall that has whiteboard paint on it. And it's on a graph where for the user, it's super beneficial to them, or I guess the bottom right would be least beneficial to them to most beneficial to them. And then the other axis is the difficulty to implement, easiest or hardest to easiest. Anything that ends up in the most beneficial and easy to implement is the stuff you can do right away. Then the stuff that's maybe in the middle of both of those axes is stuff you maybe table and think about a little bit more long-term, and the stuff that does not benefit them and is hard to do is stuff that you don't do. That's how I came up with this list. These are things that you can do right away. And then there's a few that are more in the middle ground. Be an ally, even if it doesn't affect you. That's really important. I have dealt personally with this a lot of, it's important for me as a woman and as an immigrant and as a person of color to speak up for everyone, but I can't do it by myself, even though I'm standing up here by myself right now. A lot of people need your support. So if it's not affecting you, that doesn't matter. Go help someone else. They need it. They might just need someone to sit next to them. They might just need encouragement. They might just need a taco. I mean, they need a taco. There's no might. Put your money where your mouth is. So, support causes that you believe in. Donate to the things. If you do believe in diversity, inclusion, and equality, then ask those questions to the organizations or shops or businesses that you interact with and get their stance on it. And then support the ones that support you and the people that you care about. Ask about diversity inclusion efforts in the workplace when you're going in for an interview. It's as much of an interview for them as it is for you. Analyze job descriptions. There's a few great tools on GitHub that people have put together that you can copy and paste job descriptions into it, and it'll tell you if that language is more masculine, feminine, or neutral. And then surround yourself with a diverse support group. If everyone around you looks the same, that might mean you may want to think about a few things and what your purview, what your view is of the world. With that, I really want to say thank you to Creative Mornings, to Tina in New York for creating Creative Mornings. You are all amazing, and I love you all. Thank you.